The Empathic Echo. By Thomas King. Chapter 5. The Elemental Forge. The labyrinthine passages of the royal citadel, once a shadowy mystery to Zan, now unfolded before him not as a threat, but as a guided path. Alara moved with a practiced ease, her presence a subtle anchor in the grand, echoing halls. Her discretion was a testament to her skill. There were shadows within shadows, weaving through corridors that pulsed with the distant thrum of a city alive, yet oblivious to the boy walking its heart. He felt the weight of his newfound alliance with Alara, a quiet understanding passing between them in the silent exchange of glances. The wooden bird, still clutched in his hand, felt less like a burden and more like a promise. They ascended, not through grand staircases that announced their presence, but through a series of ascending service passages, their rough-hewn stone a comforting contrast to the polished marble of the public areas. The air grew cooler, carrying with it the faint, metallic tang of the forge, a scent Zan had only ever associated with the rough, smoky workshops of the city's underbelly. Here, however, it was clean, controlled, and laced with something else, a subtle vibration that tickled his senses, a latent energy that hummed beneath the surface of the stone. This was Ethelgard's heart, its engine, and Alara was leading him into its innermost chambers. Finally, they emerged not into a grand hall, but into an enclosed courtyard, a place seemingly forgotten by time and neglect. High walls, crafted from the same dark, unyielding stone as the citadel itself, rose on all sides, effectively cutting off the space from the outside world. The sky above was a fractured mosaic, visible only in narrow strips between the battlements, a constant reminder of their isolation. The ground beneath his feet was not cobblestone, but a packed earth, strangely soft and yielding, dotted with patches of resilient moss and hardy, low-growing flora that seemed to thrive on the ambient magic. This was no ordinary courtyard. Even to Zan's untrained eye, the air here felt different, charged. Faint, shimmering lines of power were etched into the stones of the walls, intricate sigils that pulsed with a soft, internal light. Alara explained their purpose in a low murmur, her voice barely disturbing the quietude. "These are wards, Zan. Ancient protections woven by the first mages of Ethelgard. They serve to contain, to focus, and to shield us from unwanted attention." She gestured to the very air around them. "The elemental spirits are volatile. Their manifestation, especially for the untrained, can be chaotic. These wards ensure that any unleashed energy remains within this space, preventing unintended consequences." He looked around, his senses struggling to process the subtle shifts in the atmosphere. It was as if the very stones around them were breathing, exhaling a silent, potent magic. In the center of the courtyard, a raised platform of dark, obsidian-like rock stood, smooth and unblemished, radiating a faint warmth. It was stark and simple, devoid of any ornamentation, yet it hummed with an undeniable power. This, Alara explained, was the focal point, the altar upon which the lessons would unfold. "This place," she continued, her gaze sweeping across the enclosure, "was once the primary training ground for the elemental guilds. Long before the current structures of the citadel were established, before the guilds themselves were centralized and their practices codified into the rigid doctrines you might be familiar with. Here, the old ways were practiced. The direct communion with the spirits, the raw manipulation of the fundamental forces." She turned to him, her eyes serious. "It is a place steeped in power and in history. A place where the veil between worlds is thin, and where your own nascent abilities can be nurtured without fear of immediate disruption." The contrast to his previous life was jarring, almost disorienting. His existence had been a constant struggle against the elements, against the indifference of the world, against the harsh realities of hunger and exposure. He had learned to read the subtle signs of the weather, to find shelter from the biting wind, to endure the scorching sun and the drenching rain. But this was a different kind of engagement with the elemental forces. This was about understanding them, about shaping them, about becoming a conduit for their power, rather than merely a passive recipient of their fury. "You lived your life acutely aware of your surroundings, Zan," Alara said, as if reading his thoughts. "You learned to anticipate the changes in the wind, the subtle shifts in the light that foretold danger or opportunity. That innate awareness, that finely tuned perception, is precisely what we will build upon. The elements are not mere forces to be endured, they are conscious entities, with their own rhythms, their own desires, their own ancient wisdom. She picked up a small, smooth stone from the ground, its surface cool to the touch. Water flows, air moves, earth is steadfast, and fire consumes and transforms. Each has a spirit, a will. And you, Zan, have the potential to not just command them, but to commune with them. He looked at the stone in her hand, then at the packed earth beneath his feet. He had always felt a connection to the natural world, a primal understanding of its moods. He could sense a storm brewing long before the clouds gathered, feel the subtle shift in the air that signaled a change in the season. But he had never considered these forces to have spirits, or wills of their own. To him, they were simply aspects of the environment, unpredictable and often hostile. The elemental spirits are not beings in the way we understand them, Elara clarified, her voice gentle. They are raw manifestations of the fundamental energies that compose our world. Think of them as the architects of reality, the very building blocks of existence. Fire is not just heat, it is the embodiment of passion, of destruction, of creation. Water is not just liquid, it is emotion, intuition, adaptability. Earth is not just solid ground, it is stability, endurance, resilience. And air is not just breath, it is thought, communication, freedom. To understand them is to understand the very essence of life. She placed the stone back on the ground, and then, with a deliberate movement, she focused her attention on the obsidian platform. Zen watched, mesmerized, as a faint, ethereal glow began to emanate from its surface. It started as a mere suggestion of light, a faint shimmer, and then intensified, coalescing into a swirling vortex of opalescent mist. The air around the platform grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy that made the fine hairs on Zan's arms stand on end. "This is where your tutelage begins," Elara stated, her voice now holding a deeper resonance. "We will start with the foundational principles. With attunement. You must learn to perceive the subtle energies that permeate this place, to differentiate them, to understand their inherent nature. It is a process of opening yourself, of quieting the noise of your own thoughts and listening to the silent symphony of the elements." She gestured for him to approach the platform. Hesitantly, Zan moved forward, the packed earth seeming to hum beneath his boots. As he neared the obsidian, he could feel a subtle pull, a gentle tugging sensation that drew him closer. The mist swirled faster, forming indistinct shapes that danced at the periphery of his vision. He could feel the heat of it, not the searing heat of a bonfire, but a deep, comforting warmth that seeped into his bones. "Close your eyes, Zan," Elara instructed softly. "Breathe deeply. Feel the earth beneath your feet. It is ancient, steadfast. It has borne the weight of ages, witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Feel its strength. Let it ground you." He obeyed, closing his eyes, trying to push aside the lingering apprehension. He focused on the sensation of the earth, the subtle give of the soil, the unseen network of roots beneath. He tried to imagine its immense, unyielding power. It was like trying to grasp smoke. "Now feel the air," Elara continued, her voice a guiding thread. "It surrounds you, invisible yet all-encompassing. It carries the scent of rain, the whisper of distant voices, the breath of life itself. Feel its lightness, its freedom. Let it flow through you, filling every space." He focused on his breathing, the inhale and exhale that sustained him. He felt the gentle current of air caressing his skin, the subtle movement of his clothes. It was a familiar sensation, yet Elara's words lent it a new dimension, a sense of vastness and interconnectedness. "And now," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the growing hum. "Feel the fire. Not the fire that burns and destroys, but the fire that warms, that illuminates, that purifies. Feel its vibrant energy, its relentless drive. It is the spark of life, the pulse of passion." This was the most challenging. The idea of fire evoked images of destruction, of the uncontrollable blaze that had threatened his life in the past. But as he focused, as he tried to perceive beyond the immediate image, he felt something different. A vibrant, almost joyful energy pulsed within the mist, a powerful thrumming that resonated with a hidden part of himself. It was exhilarating and terrifying. He felt a subtle shift in the energy surrounding him. The mist on the platform seemed to coalesce, to take on a more defined form. It swirled and twisted, and then, with a sudden, silent unfurling, a small, flickering flame ignited in the center of the obsidian. It was no larger than his hand, but it burned with an intensity that belied its size. The flames were not orange or red, but a shimmering, ethereal blue, casting an otherworldly glow on Alara's composed features and Zan's wide, astonished eyes. "This is Ignis," Alara said, her voice calm, devoid of the awe that Zan felt. "A nascent fire spirit. It is drawn to the energy of this place, and to the potential it senses within you." Zan stared at the dancing blue flame, mesmerized. It moved with a life of its own, its tendrils reaching and retracting, its light pulsating with a steady rhythm. He could feel its warmth, a gentle embrace that spread through him, chasing away the last vestiges of his apprehension. It felt welcoming. "The spirits will respond to your intent, Zan," Alara explained. "They are not mindless automatons. They are forces of nature, and like nature, they can be approached with respect, with understanding, or with brute force. The latter will rarely yield the results you desire. The former can unlock wonders." She gestured towards the flame. "Try to communicate with it. Not with words, but with feeling. Send it your curiosity, your willingness to learn, your respect for its nature." Hesitantly, Zan extended a trembling hand towards the blue flame. He focused his intention, picturing the wooden bird in his palm, a symbol of the tentative connection he had forged with Alara. He thought of the quiet sincerity in her eyes, the promise of guidance. He sent a silent message of inquiry, a question without words. "Who are you? What are you?" The flame flickered, its light intensifying. It seemed to lean towards his outstretched hand, its tendrils dancing in an intricate pattern. Then, with a sudden surge, it elongated, a stream of blue fire reaching out, not to burn, but to connect. It touched the very tip of his index finger. A jolt, not of pain, but of pure, unadulterated energy, coursed through him. It was like a lightning strike, but one that infused rather than destroyed. Images flashed through his mind, the roaring inferno of a volcano, the gentle warmth of a hearth fire, the searing heat of the forge, the wild dance of flames in a storm. He saw fire as a tool of creation, as a force of purification, as an agent of change. He felt its hunger, its passion, its relentless drive to consume and transform. He gasped, pulling his hand back, the connection broken. The blue flame on the platform recoiled, shrinking back to its original size, its ethereal glow softening. Zan looked at his finger, expecting to see it seared or blackened, but it was unharmed. The only lingering sensation was a faint warmth, a pleasant tingling that seemed to spread through his entire being. "You have made contact," Alara said, a rare smile gracing her lips. "A direct communion. It is a significant step, Zan. Most take weeks, months, even years to achieve such a connection. You have a natural affinity, a deep wellspring of power waiting to be tapped." He looked at her, his mind reeling from the intensity of the experience. It felt like the essence of fire itself?" Alara finished for him. "Yes. That is the nature of elemental spirits. They are the raw, unadulterated forces that shape our world. And you, Zan, have just begun to listen to their song." She gestured to the wards again, their faint glow a constant reminder of the controlled environment. "This is why we are here. In this sanctuary, you can explore these connections, these potentials, without the risks that would accompany them in the wider world. Your ability to influence time, as you experienced, is a testament to your innate power. The elemental forces are another facet of that same profound gift." She then turned his attention to the other elements. They began with water, Alara drawing forth a shimmering pool of liquid from the very air, its surface swirling with an inner light. Zan felt its cool embrace, its fluid nature, its capacity for both gentle nourishment and destructive force. He learned to sense its currents, to feel its ebb and flow, and to coax it into forming delicate, ephemeral shapes that danced and dissolved at her command. He discovered the quiet strength of earth, not just the packed soil of the courtyard, but the unyielding bedrock beneath. Alara showed him how to feel its density, its resilience, and to draw upon its stability, anchoring himself against the more volatile energies. With each element, the process was the same. Alara would guide him, coaxing him to open his senses, to listen to the unique voice of each spirit. He would then attempt to connect, to communicate, to forge a bond. There were moments of frustration, when the energies refused to respond, when his focus wavered, and the spirits remained aloof. But there were also moments of profound breakthrough, like the initial connection with Ignis, where the elements seemed to welcome him, to acknowledge his presence. Your journey is not about bending the elements to your will, Zan, Elara reiterated, her voice a constant source of calm guidance. It is about understanding their nature, their purpose, and finding a harmonious balance. Think of it as a dance. You lead sometimes, but you also follow. You learn the steps, you feel the rhythm, and together, you create something beautiful. As the day wore on, the fractured sunlight filtering through the battlements began to dim. The blue flame of Ignis still flickered on the obsidian platform, a silent testament to their progress. Zan, though physically and mentally exhausted, felt a strange sense of exhilaration, a deep satisfaction that had been absent from his life for so long. He had begun to understand a language he had never known existed, a language spoken by the very fabric of the world. We will continue this tomorrow, Elara said, her voice soft with weariness but also with a quiet resolve. There is much to learn, and your path is just beginning. But you have taken the first, crucial steps. You have opened your mind, and your spirit, to the elemental forces. You have shown them respect, and they have begun to respond. She led him back through the winding passages, the citadel now feeling less like a labyrinth and more like a complex, ordered system. The scent of the forge, once alien, now carried a hint of familiarity, a promise of the power that lay dormant within Ethelgard's walls, and within himself. As they emerged back into the less secluded parts of the citadel, the distant sounds of the city seemed to fade, replaced by the echo of the elemental spirits, a silent chorus that now accompanied his every step, a reminder of the extraordinary world he was just beginning to discover, within the guarded confines of the royal citadel. The wards of the courtyard had not just contained the elemental energies. They had also contained the beginning of a new life for Zan, a life forged in the heart of the elemental forge. The day's lessons had concluded, leaving Zan with a mind brimming with new sensations and a body humming with residual energy. As Elara guided him back through the citadel's arteries, the previous chapter's narrative of his entry into the elemental forge was reinforced. The air, which had once seemed merely cool and tinged with metallic scent, now felt alive, resonant with the echoes of his nascent interactions with the primal forces. The courtyard, a sanctuary of controlled chaos, had been a crucible for his understanding, but Elara's final words that day had hinted at a deeper, more personal aspect of elemental mastery that would be explored further. The raw power he had touched was not merely an external force, it was intrinsically linked to the internal landscape of the wielder. Now, back in a less restricted part of the citadel, Elara's focus shifted from the outward manifestation of elemental energy to its subtle, yet potent, connection with the human spirit. They found themselves in a quiet alcove, a space adorned with tapestries depicting ancient celestial charts and astronomical instruments, hinting at a different kind of knowledge than the raw elemental power Zan had just experienced. The subdued light cast long shadows, creating an atmosphere conducive to introspection. We have begun to understand the elements as external forces, Zan. Elara began, her voice soft yet carrying the weight of profound knowledge. We have touched upon their raw power, their fundamental nature. But this is only one side of the coin. The true mastery, the deep communion that separates a novice from a seasoned elementalist, lies not just in commanding the forces without, but in understanding the currents within. She paused, letting her words settle in the quiet air. The elemental spirits, as you've glimpsed, are not mere conduits for power. They are extensions of ourselves, reflections of our inner selves, and their strength is inextricably tied to the state of our own emotional and spiritual being. Zan listened intently, the wooden bird still a comforting presence in his hand. He had felt the raw energy of Ignis, the cool fluidity of the water she had conjured, the unyielding steadfastness of the earth. Yet, the idea of these forces being extensions of himself was a concept that still felt abstract. He recalled the lingering fear that had tinged his initial encounter with fire, the way it had momentarily clouded his perception. Was that the connection Elara spoke of? Consider your own emotions, Zan. Elara continued, her gaze steady and knowing. Fear, anger, joy, sorrow, These are not simply fleeting feelings. They are powerful energies that surge through you, shaping your perceptions, influencing your actions, and crucially, affecting your ability to connect with the elemental spirits. When you are overcome by fear, the fire spirit may feel distant, its warmth replaced by a chilling apprehension. If anger clouds your judgment, the earth may feel brittle, unyielding, or the water turbulent and uncontrollable. She walked towards a large, polished obsidian mirror that hung on one wall, its surface reflecting the muted light of the chamber. The spirits draw sustenance from our emotional core. A heart filled with courage and conviction will empower a fire spirit to blaze with unprecedented might. A spirit at peace, filled with compassion, will make the water flow with unparalleled grace and healing. Conversely, she added, her voice dropping slightly, suppressing your emotions, or allowing them to fester unaddressed, can have a detrimental effect. It is like damming a river. The pressure builds, the water becomes stagnant, and eventually, the dam can break, leading to uncontrolled outbursts or a complete severing of the connection. Zen thought back to his life before the Citadel, a life defined by a constant need to suppress his feelings. Survival had demanded a stoic facade, a careful rationing of any outward display of vulnerability or emotion. He had learned to bottle up his fear, his frustration, his occasional bursts of defiant hope. Had that constant suppression hindered him even then, before he knew of elemental spirits? It is a delicate balance, Alara explained, as if sensing his internal struggle. We are not advocating for unchecked emotional indulgence. That, too, can lead to instability. The key is understanding, acknowledging, and channeling. To feel your emotions fully, to understand their source, and then to consciously direct that energy through the elemental conduit. It is about discipline, not denial. About awareness, not apathy. She turned from the mirror, her expression earnest. When you felt the warmth of Ignis, Zan, you also felt a flicker of apprehension, did you not? That was your ingrained survival instinct, a manifestation of past traumas. But you pushed through it. You focused on curiosity, on learning, and that intention allowed you to bridge the gap. That is the essence of the spirit bond. It is a resonance. Your spirit, your emotions, resonate with the spirit of the element. And the stronger and clearer that resonance, the deeper the connection. As she spoke, a subtle shift occurred in the air around Alara. The light seemed to deepen, to coalesce. Zen watched, captivated, as a hazy, ethereal form began to materialize around her. It was indistinct at first, like smoke swirling in a draft, but gradually, with a precision that spoke of immense control, it took on a definite shape. Feathers of shimmering mist began to form, a sharp, hooked beak, and the keen, intelligent eyes of an owl. The spirit formed around Alara not as an external entity, but as an integrated aspect of her being, a luminescent extension of her very essence. The owl spirit, silent and majestic, hovered beside her, its misty wings beating with an almost imperceptible rhythm. It wasn't a separate creature, it was as if Alara herself had partially transformed, her form augmented by this spectral avian presence. The air around them thrummed with a quiet, powerful energy, a testament to Alara's focused intent and her profound emotional equilibrium. "This is Lumina," Alara said, her voice imbued with a gentle affection, her gaze fixed on the spirit beside her. "My all spirit. She is a manifestation of my awareness, my keen perception, and my ability to observe without judgment. Her form is fleeting, as are all spirits, but her presence is constant. She amplifies my senses, allowing me to perceive the subtle currents of magic, the unspoken thoughts of others, and the hidden dangers that lurk in the shadows." Zan stared, mesmerized. He had seen the blue flame Ignis, but this felt different. Ignis had appeared on the obsidian platform, a tangible focal point of elemental power. Lumina, however, seemed to flow from Alara herself, a living extension of her being. It was not just an external spirit that she had summoned, it was as if a part of her had manifested, taking on a form that reflected her inner nature. "The strength of my bond with Lumina is directly proportional to my own inner clarity," Alara explained, her hand reaching out, her fingers passing through the misty form of the owl without resistance, yet with a palpable connection. "When I am calm, focused, and at peace, Lumina is vibrant and strong, her senses sharp. If I were to succumb to doubt or distraction, her form would waver, her presence would dim. The same applies to you, Zan, with your elemental spirits. The more you understand and integrate your own emotional landscape, the more potent your elemental manifestations will become. She turned her attention back to Zan, her eyes conveying a deep understanding. You have a remarkable affinity for the elements, Zan. The ease with which you connected with Ignis and the other spirits is rare. But that affinity is also a mirror. It will reflect your inner state. If you harbor resentment, the earth might become stubborn and difficult to influence. If you are consumed by impatience, the air might become erratic and unpredictable. Zan found himself nodding, a new layer of understanding dawning. He remembered his initial struggle to grasp the concept of Earth's steadfastness. He had associated steadfastness with stagnation, with being stuck, a feeling he had desperately tried to escape. But Alara had reframed it as resilience, as endurance. It was not about being trapped, it was about being unmovable, a source of stability. That subtle shift in perception, he now realized, had likely been crucial in his ability to connect. The spirits are not simply tools to be wielded, Alara emphasized, her voice resonating with conviction. They are partners. They are facets of a greater, interconnected reality, and our connection to them is a sacred trust. To truly wield their power, you must first nurture your own spirit. You must learn to navigate the tempestuous seas of your own emotions, to find the calm eye of the storm within yourself. Only then can you truly understand and guide the elemental forces that flow through you. She then moved to demonstrate, her actions a silent but powerful lesson. She closed her eyes for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. Zen watched as Lumina shimmered, her form growing slightly less defined, as if reacting to Alara's internal shift. Then, Alara took a deep, cleansing breath, her shoulders relaxing, her expression softening. As she exhaled, Lumina solidified once more, her misty form regaining its clarity and vibrancy. This is the essence of emotional discipline, Alara stated, her voice now imbued with a quiet strength. It is not about eradicating feelings, but about understanding their ebb and flow, and choosing how they influence you. When you feel anger rising, acknowledge it. Ask yourself why you are angry. What is the root of this emotion? Once you understand it, you can choose whether to let it consume you or to channel its energy productively. For instance, anger can be transmuted into a fierce determination, a powerful force to overcome obstacles. She gestured towards a small, intricate water basin that sat on a nearby pedestal. Or if you feel sadness, acknowledge it. Allow yourself to feel the sorrow, but do not let it drown you. Perhaps you can channel that empathy into a gentler approach with the water spirits, understanding their fluidity, their capacity for both deep sorrow and profound healing. The spirits are an extension of our own emotional spectrum, and by understanding and mastering our inner world, we unlock their true potential. Zan considered this. He had always seen his emotions as a weakness, something to be hidden. The idea that they could be a source of power, that they were, in fact, the very conduit through which he could connect with the elements, was a revolutionary thought. It shifted his perspective entirely, from one of suppression to one of integration. Your own experiences have forged a resilience within you, Zan, Alara said, her gaze meeting his, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. You have endured hardships that would break many. That inner strength, that capacity to persevere, will be your greatest asset. But it is crucial that you do not mistake that resilience for emotional numbness. True strength lies in feeling deeply, understanding those feelings, and choosing how to respond. It is in this conscious choice that the spirit bond is truly forged, not just between you and the elements, but within yourself. She then guided him through a series of meditative exercises, focusing on his breathing and his internal state. He was encouraged to bring forth specific emotions, not to dwell in them, but to acknowledge their presence, to feel their texture, and then to release them, allowing them to flow through him and out, like a breath. It was a process of inner purification, of attuning himself not just to the external elemental forces, but to the subtle energies that course through his own being. He found that when he focused on a feeling of calm curiosity, the lingering warmth in his fingertips from his encounter with Ignis seemed to intensify. When he allowed himself to feel a sense of wonder at the vastness of the citadel, he could almost feel the subtle hum of the air around him, a soft, whispering symphony. It was as if his internal state was directly influencing the subtle energies he had begun to perceive. The spirits are sentient, in their own way, Alara continued, her voice a gentle guide through his internal exploration. They respond to intent, to emotion, to the very essence of your being. Think of it as a language of the heart, a dialogue of souls. You speak, and they answer. But if your voice is muddled, if your intentions are unclear, their response will be hesitant, or worse, misdirected. She picked up a single, perfect water droplet that hovered suspended in the air before her, a miniature world of shimmering light. Water can be gentle, nurturing, or it can be a destructive force, capable of carving canyons. Its nature depends on the intent and the emotional state of the one who calls upon it. A heart filled with compassion will draw forth the nurturing flow. A spirit consumed by rage might unleash a torrent. The element itself remains constant, but its manifestation is dictated by the wielder's inner world. Zan watched as the droplet pulsed, reflecting the ambient light, and then Alara gently guided it to her lips, where it was absorbed with a sigh of serene contentment. It is about finding harmony, she murmured, between the internal and the external, between the spirit within and the spirits without. Your journey into the elemental forge is not just about mastering external powers, it is about forging a stronger, more integrated self. It is about understanding that you are not separate from the elements, but a part of them, and they, in turn, are a part of you. The spirit bond is not merely a connection, it is an embodiment. As the day drew to a close, the lessons shifted from abstract concepts to tangible practice. Alara instructed Zan to try and recall the feeling of Ignis's energy, not with his hands, but with his emotions. He was to focus on the memory of its vibrant, consuming nature, its drive for transformation, but also the accompanying sense of warmth and invitation he had felt. He was to recall the profound jolt of energy that had coursed through him, and to amplify that feeling, not through force, but through a deliberate projection of inner resonance. He closed his eyes, picturing the blue flame, reliving the moment of connection. He focused on the passion, the vibrancy, and then, deliberately, on the feeling of welcome, of acceptance. He poured his burgeoning desire to learn, his respect for the spirit, and his growing understanding of its nature into that mental image. For a long moment, nothing happened. The air remained still, the light unchanged. Then, a faint warmth began to emanate from his palm, not a burning heat, but a gentle, pulsing radiance. He opened his eyes to see a faint, ethereal blue glow shimmering in his hand, a miniature echo of Ignis. It was fragile, fleeting, but undeniably there. A genuine smile touched Alara's lips, a rare and beautiful sight. "You are beginning to understand, Zan," she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet pride. "The spirits are not external forces to be commanded, but partners to be embraced. They are reflections of our own inner selves, and by mastering our emotions, by integrating our experiences, we forge a bond that is not just of power, but of deep, abiding connection. Your spirit is opening, and in doing so, it is beginning to speak the language of the elements. This is the true beginning of your journey as an elementalist. Not just to wield power, but to become one with it." The glow in his hand faded as his focus wavered, but the sensation lingered, a warm ember of possibility. He had not just touched the elemental spirits, he had begun to feel them respond to the subtlest shifts within himself. The lesson was clear: the battlefield for mastery of the elements lay not in some external arena, but within the depths of his own heart and mind. The true elemental forge was not just a place, it was a state of being, a profound communion between the inner and outer worlds, a journey that had just begun. The quiet alcove, once a sanctuary of Alara's teachings, now felt like a testing ground for Zan's inner turmoil. He sat cross-legged on the cool stone floor, the smooth, cool surface of the wooden bird a familiar comfort in his hands. Alara's words, about the intrinsic link between emotion and elemental power, echoed in his mind, resonating with a truth he was beginning to grasp but struggled to embody. "First, Zan," Alara had instructed, her voice calm and steady, "we must learn to feel. Not to dwell, not to be consumed, but simply to acknowledge the presence of an emotion, to understand its shape and its texture." This simple instruction, deceptively so, proved to be a monumental task. Zan's life before the Citadel had been a master class in emotional suppression. Survival had necessitated a shell, a carefully constructed facade of indifference. Fear, anger, even fleeting moments of joy, had been swiftly catalogued and then buried, deemed inconvenient, even dangerous. To call forth an emotion now felt like trying to excavate a forgotten ruin, the access points long sealed by necessity. He closed his eyes, focusing on his breath, the gentle rise and fall of his chest. Elara had told him to start with something simple, something neutral. Think of a mild sense of calm, she had prompted. The feeling of a quiet morning, the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Zan tried. He conjured images of serene landscapes, of tranquil waters. He could see them, could imagine the feeling, but the actual sensation eluded him. It was like trying to grasp smoke. The harder he reached, the more it dissipated. A faint prickle of frustration began to surface. Why can't I just feel it? It's just a feeling. The thought itself was a small tremor. Unbidden, he felt a subtle shift beneath him. The stone floor seemed to vibrate ever so slightly, a barely perceptible tremor that rippled through his legs. He blinked his eyes open, surprised. Elara's gaze was steady, observant, but not accusatory. You felt that, didn't you? She asked softly. Zan nodded, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. The ground, it shook a little. Indeed, Elara confirmed. A flicker of frustration, a desire to force the feeling, and the earth, your steadfast element, responded. It did not erupt, it did not crumble. It merely shifted. A gentle reminder of its connection to your inner state. She gestured for him to relax, to release the tension that had coiled around his shoulders. This is what we must learn to manage. Not to prevent the feelings, for that is impossible, but to understand their influence, to guide them. He tried again, this time focusing on a memory of quiet contentment, a rare moment of peace he had experienced in his youth, before the true harshness of his life had set in. It was a fleeting memory, tinged with the melancholy of being lost, but beneath that was a kernel of simple happiness. He held on to it, nurturing it, not forcing it, but allowing it to breathe. He visualized the warmth of the sun on his skin, the faint scent of wildflowers. He felt a subtle warmth spread through his chest, a gentle blooming sensation. As the warmth grew, a soft light began to emanate from the tips of the torches lining the alcove's walls. It wasn't a fiery blaze, but a dimming, as if the flames were struggling to maintain their usual intensity. The light seemed to be drawn inward, towards Zan, coalescing around him like a hazy aura. He felt a subtle draining of energy, not unpleasant, but noticeable. Elara's brow furrowed slightly. Curious, she murmured, her eyes fixed on the flickering torches. A sense of contentment, of inner warmth, and the ambient light seems to dim, as if being absorbed. Perhaps the light spirits are reacting to your internal glow, or perhaps it's a manifestation of your own energy drawing from the surroundings. She then brought her attention back to Zan. Do not be discouraged by these subtle reactions, Zan. They are simply indicators, signposts on your path. They show us the channels of connection, the nascent pathways being forged. Zan felt a surge of disappointment. He had hoped for something more significant, something that felt like progress. Instead, he had caused a tremor in the ground and dimmed the lights. It feels so small, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. And unstable. Small things grow, Zan, Elara said gently, her voice a soothing balm. And stability is not achieved in a single step, but through countless repetitions, through patient understanding. Your lifelong habit of suppression has built a formidable dam within you. We are not breaking it down all at once. We are learning to open the sluice gates, just a little, to allow the currents to flow in a controlled manner. She stood and moved towards a low stone table upon which sat a bowl filled with smooth, dark river stones. Let us try something more tangible. I want you to focus on the feeling of steadiness, of being rooted. Think of the mountain, unmoving, enduring. Think of these stones, solid, grounded. She picked up one of the stones, its surface cool and smooth against her palm. Now try to evoke that feeling within yourself. Feel the weight of the earth beneath you, the unwavering strength that comes from being unyielding. Zan took a deep breath and tried to summon the image of a mountain. He saw it in his mind's eye, vast and imposing, its peak shrouded in clouds. He tried to feel its solidity, its permanence. A faint sensation of heaviness settled in his limbs, a grounding pull. As he focused, he felt a subtle vibration, more pronounced this time, emanating from the floor. The bowls holding the river stones on the table seemed to rattle slightly. A few of the stones, jostled by the tremor, skittered and fell to the floor with soft thuds. "Better," Elara said, a hint of encouragement in her tone. "You are connecting with the Earth's own essence. That tremor, while disruptive, is a testament to your growing resonance. The Earth's spirit feels your intention, your focus on its fundamental nature, and it echoes that back to you." She knelt and began to gather the fallen stones, her movements fluid and unhurried. "The key is to accept these manifestations, not to fear them or to be frustrated by them. They are your allies, showing you the way." She returned to her seated position, placing the collected stones back into the bowl. "Now let us attempt to temper that steadiness with fluidity. Imagine the river, flowing around obstacles, adapting, yielding. Imagine water smooth, adaptable, yet powerful." Zen shifted his focus. He pictured a winding river, its surface shimmering in the sunlight. He tried to feel its movement, its effortless grace. He imagined himself as the water, yielding, flowing, unresisting. As he concentrated, he felt a strange sensation in his hands, a tingling coolness. He looked down and saw a faint mist beginning to gather around his palms, like dew forming on a cold surface. The mist swirled gently, not dissipating, but holding its form. A slow smile spread across Elara's face. "Ah, now we see the interplay. The earth's steadiness, and the water's fluidity, beginning to harmonize within you. You are not trying to force them into submission, but to allow them to coexist, to understand their respective natures." She extended her hand, palm open. "Can you direct that mist, San? Not with force, but with intention? Imagine it flowing towards my hand." San focused, picturing the swirling mist in his hands. He didn't try to push it, but rather invited it, coaxed it. He thought of the gentle flow of a stream reaching out. The mist seemed to respond, slowly drifting from his palms, gathering momentum as it moved across the short distance between them. It enveloped Elara's outstretched hand, a cool, almost palpable caress. He felt a jolt of exhilaration, a genuine sense of accomplishment. He had done it. He had influenced something beyond himself, not through raw power, but through a directed feeling. I made the mist move," he stammered, a wide grin spreading across his face. "You did," Elara confirmed, her eyes sparkling. "And it responded to your subtle intention, to the gentle guidance of your will. This is the beginning, Zan. This is the first whisper of the elemental dialogue." She then withdrew her hand, and the mist, as if sensing the shift in focus, dissipated into the air. "But observe," she cautioned, her expression turning serious once more. "Even this simple act had its echoes. As the mist flowed from your hands, did you notice anything else?" Zan thought back. He had been so focused on the mist, on the achievement. He tried to recall the sensations, the subtle shifts. "My hands felt cold," he said, remembering the tingling. "And lighter somehow. As if a bit of the grounding you helped me find had lessened." "Precisely," Elara said, nodding. "The water spirit's fluidity lent you its nature, but in doing so, it subtly drew from the earth's steadiness. You felt lighter because the grounding anchor had loosened. This is the nature of elemental resonance. Each element has its own qualities, its own inherent tendencies. When you tap into one, you are, in essence, borrowing its essence, and that inevitably influences the other energies within you. Mastery comes not from isolating these energies, but from understanding their balance, their constant, dynamic interplay." She then instructed him to try and evoke a sense of fiery passion, the drive and intensity he had felt with Ignis. He recalled the memory, the exhilarating surge of power, the warmth that had spread through him. He focused on the feeling of unstoppable momentum, of transformation. As he held the image, the residual warmth in his hands from the earlier Ignis encounter seemed to flare. It wasn't a controlled blue flame, but a diffuse, pulsing heat that radiated outward, making the air around him feel noticeably warmer. The torches on the walls, which had dimmed earlier, now seemed to flicker with renewed vigor, their flames leaping higher, casting dancing shadows across the room. Observe the change, Elara pointed out, her voice a low hum of observation. The warmth, the intensity, the outward projection of energy. This is the fire spirit responding to your evocation. It feeds on that passion, that drive, and it amplifies it. But notice also, she added, a subtle warning in her tone, the way the other elements react. The torches, imbued with light and air spirits, are energized by the fire's intensity. They become brighter, more vibrant. The earth, which had responded to your earlier focus with a grounding tremor, now feels less present. The solid weight has diminished. You are becoming more buoyant, more volatile, as the fire's influence grows. Zen felt a thrill coursing through him, a potent mixture of excitement and a healthy dose of apprehension. The power was intoxicating, even in its nascent, unpredictable forms. He could feel the heat radiating from his palms, a tangible manifestation of his inner state. He also felt a subtle restlessness stirring within him, a desire to move, to act, that was at odds with the grounded calm he had previously cultivated. This is the delicate dance, Zan, Elara continued, her gaze sweeping over him, assessing the subtle shifts in his aura. You are learning to conduct the orchestra of your inner self, and through that, the elemental forces that are its counterparts. To master the fire, you must acknowledge its power, its drive for change, but you must also retain your connection to the earth's stability, lest you burn too brightly and consume yourself. To call upon the water's serenity, you must be mindful not to let its flow become stagnation, lest you lose your own inner drive. She then shifted the focus. Let us try to combine two emotions, two elements, in a more harmonious fashion. Imagine the gentle warmth of the sun, a benevolent fire, and the soothing embrace of water, a comforting balm. Can you hold both feelings simultaneously? The invigorating warmth, and the calming fluidity? Zan closed his eyes, attempting to weave together the sensations. He focused on the memory of basking in the sun's warmth, a sensation of pure, unadulterated comfort. Then, he overlaid it with the feeling of being submerged in a warm bath, the water embracing him, dissolving any tension. It was difficult, like trying to hold two different melodies in his mind at once. He felt a flicker of frustration, and the ground beneath him gave a faint, almost imperceptible shudder. He felt a wave of warmth emanate from his hands, and the air around him grew noticeably warmer, but then a cool mist began to form, and his hands felt strangely light. The disparate sensations seemed to pull against each other, creating a disharmony that was almost palpable. See how they resist integration? Elara observed, her voice soft but clear. The fire's outward heat and the water's inward coolness struggle for dominance. Your own internal conflict, your ingrained tendency to compartmentalize, is reflected in their interaction. You are not yet allowing them to blend, to find a new, unified essence. You are holding them as separate entities, vying for control. She gestured for him to release the feelings, to let them go. Zen exhaled slowly, and the warmth subsided, the mist dissipated, and the subtle grounding returned. It is not about forcing them into an unnatural union, Elara explained. It is about finding the common ground, the shared space where they can coexist and complement each other. Think of steam, Zan. It is the union of fire and water, a manifestation far more potent and versatile than either element alone. It is born of heat and of fluidity. She then guided him through a visualization exercise. Imagine a spring, she instructed. Fed by the earth, its waters warmed by the sun's gentle rays. Feel the solidity of the ground supporting the spring, the coolness of the water bubbling forth, and the soft, pervasive warmth of the sunlight filtering through the canopy above. Feel the elements working in concert, each enhancing the other. Zen focused on the image of a secluded spring, surrounded by moss-covered rocks. He felt the solid, cool earth beneath him, the refreshing coolness of the water as it trickled from the rocks, and the gentle, life-giving warmth of sunlight dappling through the leaves overhead. He held this image, not forcing any particular sensation, but simply allowing the composite feeling to settle within him. To his surprise, he felt a balanced state emerge. His hands retained a gentle warmth, but remained comfortably light. The ground beneath him felt firm yet yielding. There was no tremor, no overwhelming heat, no chilling mist. It was a state of equilibrium, a harmonious blend. There, Elara said, a genuine warmth in her voice. That is the beginning of true elemental harmony. Not by denying or suppressing, but by understanding and integrating. You have found a point of balance, a space where the elements can coexist and even enhance each other. She then looked at him intently. This is merely the first step, Zan. These are basic emotional resonances, the foundational understanding of how your inner state influences the world around you, and the elemental forces within it. Your lifelong habit of suppression has created a complex internal landscape, and navigating it will require patience, persistence, and a willingness to feel, truly feel, without judgment. She stood, stretching slightly. We will continue these exercises. You will learn to identify the subtle cues, the first whispers of an emotion's influence, and to guide it before it gains momentum. You will learn to embrace the spectrum of your feelings, not as weaknesses, but as powerful conduits for connection. For it is only when you understand and control the tempest within yourself that you can truly command the storm without. Zan, still basking in the feeling of newfound balance, nodded, a quiet determination settling within him. The path ahead was long and challenging, but for the first time, he felt that he was beginning to walk it not with force, but with understanding. The whispers of the elemental spirits were as varied as the emotions that birthed them. Elara guided Zan's understanding beyond the raw forces he had begun to touch, delving into the sentient manifestations of these energies. Think of them not merely as abstract forces, Zan, she explained, her voice weaving through the quiet of the training chamber, but as living beings, each with its own nature, its own desires, and its own inherent wisdom. They are the breath and blood of the world's magic, intrinsically tied to the collective heart of Ethelgard. She began with the most volatile, the embodiment of raw, unbridled passion and sudden joy, the salamanders. These are the spirits of fire, Elara continued, her gaze alight with an inner fire of her own. They are born of elation, of triumphant moments, of the pure, unadulterated spark of happiness that flares in the heart. When a child laughs with pure delight, when an artist witnesses their creation come to life, when a warrior achieves a hard-won victory, a salamander is born, or an existing one is fueled. She painted a picture of their form. Imagine a creature of pure, dancing flame, its scales shimmering with iridescent hues of ruby and gold. Their eyes are like molten embers, constantly shifting, reflecting the bright, fleeting nature of their origin. They are quick, mercurial, and possess an incredible warmth that can invigorate and inspire. When you feel that surge of pure joy, that feeling of being truly alive and incandescent, you are communing with the salamanders. Elara paused, letting the image settle. But like any fire, they are not without their dangers. Their joy can easily tip into recklessness. The same energy that fuels great creation can, if unchecked, consume everything in its path. A salamander's strength lies in its brilliance and its transformative power, but its weakness is its ephemerality. They are easily extinguished by doubt, by despair, or by the dampening chill of apathy. To truly wield their power, one must learn to embrace the joy without being consumed by its heat, to feel the spark without letting it become an uncontrolled inferno. It is about channeling that exhilaration, not letting it dictate your actions. Zan recalled the searing warmth he had felt when Elara had first urged him to tap into Ignis. He had felt that potent surge, that undeniable drive. He now understood that he had brushed against the domain of the salamanders, a fleeting encounter with beings of pure, effervescent joy. Next, Elara continued, her voice deepening with a sense of gravitas. We have the earth elementals. These are the spirits of steadfastness, of unwavering determination, of the deep-seated strength that anchors us against the storms of life. They are born from moments of profound resolve, from the quiet persistence that refuses to yield, from the deep, unshakable belief in one's purpose. Her description conjured images of stoic, ancient beings. Picture them as beings carved from the very stone of the mountains, their forms rough-hewn and solid. Their skin might resemble granite, or rich, dark loam, textured and unyielding. Their eyes are like polished obsidian, deep and ancient, reflecting the enduring nature of the earth. They are slow to anger, but once roused, their power is immense and immovable. When you feel that unshakable sense of purpose, that quiet strength that tells you to stand firm, you are connecting with the earth elementals. Elara's gaze met Zan's. Their strength lies in their resilience, their ability to endure hardship and remain unbroken. They are the foundation upon which all other elements build. However, their stoicism can also be their downfall. They can become too rigid, too inflexible, resistant to necessary change. Apathy can weigh them down, burying them under the accumulated inertia of the world. To master their essence, one must learn to be grounded and steadfast, but also to understand that even the mightiest mountain can be shaped by the slow, persistent flow of water over millennia. It is about embracing the unyielding strength of conviction without becoming a statue to stubbornness. Zen thought of the tremor he had felt, the subtle shift in the ground when he had focused on steadiness. He understood now that he had been calling to these patient, enduring beings, their strength a silent echo within him. Then come the water sprites, Elara murmured, her tone becoming softer, more melodic, like the gentle murmur of a stream. These are the spirits of sorrow, of empathy, of the deep, cleansing flow of emotion that allows us to process grief and to connect with the pain of others. They are born from tears, from the shared lament, from the quiet understanding that washes over us when we witness suffering. She conjured an image of ethereal, graceful beings. Imagine them as creatures of pure, flowing water, their forms shimmering and translucent. Their bodies ripple and change, taking on the colors of the deep ocean, of a clear mountain spring, or of a misty twilight. Their eyes are like deep pools, reflecting the vastness of their emotional depth. They are fluid, adaptable, and possess an unparalleled ability to soothe and to heal. When you feel the pang of sadness, the ache of loss, or the profound sense of empathy for another, you are communing with the water sprites. Elara's expression grew thoughtful. Their strength lies in their adaptability, their capacity for deep connection and emotional release. They can dissolve barriers, wash away pain, and offer solace. However, their fluidity can also be their weakness. They can become overwhelmed, swept away by the currents of despair. If one dwells too long in sorrow, the water sprites can drown them in their own grief, leading to stagnation, apathy, and a loss of will. To wield their power effectively, one must learn to flow with the emotions, to allow them to pass through, but to retain one's own core, to be the riverbank that guides the water, not the water that erodes the bank. It is about experiencing the sorrow without letting it define you, about feeling the empathy without losing yourself in the pain of others. Zen remembered the cool mist that had gathered around his hands, the feeling of lightness that had accompanied it. He had been calling upon the water sprites, their gentle, flowing essence a stark contrast to the fiery passion he had previously evoked. He felt a nascent understanding of how these seemingly opposite forces could coexist within him. And finally, Elara concluded, her voice rising with a subtle power, we have the air spirits. These are the embodiment of fear, of anxiety, of the quick, sharp breath that catches in the throat during moments of panic. They are born from surprise, from the sudden realization of danger, from the primal instinct to flee. When a sudden fright jolts you, when apprehension gnaws at your gut, or when the shadow of potential disaster looms, you are in the presence of the air spirits. Her description was of beings as fleeting and as powerful as a sudden gust of wind. Visualize them as beings of pure, swirling air, their forms indistinct and ever-changing. They might manifest as a sudden chill, a disembodied whisper on the wind, or a swirling vortex of unseen energy. Their voices are the rustle of leaves, the howl of the storm, the sharp intake of breath before a scream. They are swift, elusive, and possess an incredible ability to perceive danger and to react with blinding speed. They are the harbingers of the unknown, the instinctual warning system that keeps us alive. Elara's gaze was piercing. Their strength lies in their vigilance, their ability to sense threats and to react with unparalleled swiftness. They can grant us the agility to escape peril, the foresight to avoid danger. However, their very nature makes them prone to overreaction. If one succumbs to fear, the air spirits can amplify it into uncontrollable panic, scattering one's thoughts and actions, leading to paralysis or reckless flight. To harness their power, one must learn to acknowledge the fear, to recognize it as a warning, but to maintain control, to use its energy for focused action rather than uncontrolled flight. It is about riding the winds of apprehension, not being swept away by them. It is about understanding that while the storm may rage, the calm center of the eye can still be found within. Zen felt a resonance with this description. He had lived a life where fear had been a constant companion, a shadow that whispered in his ear. He had often felt its chaotic energy, the urge to flee, to disappear. He now understood that he had been interacting with these tempestuous air spirits, their influence a familiar, if unwelcome, presence. These are the primary elemental forms, Zan. Alara explained, gesturing around them, as if the very air pulsed with the unseen beings. The fiery salamanders of joy, the stoic earth elementals of determination, the fluid water sprites of sorrow, and the tempestuous air spirits of fear. Each is a reflection of a fundamental human emotion, amplified and given form. They are not merely passive forces, they are active participants in the emotional tapestry of Ethelgard. Their strength and their weakness are dictated by the very emotions that birth them, and by how those emotions are understood and managed by sentient beings. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. The collective emotional landscape of Ethelgard shapes their very existence. A city filled with fear will foster more powerful, more prevalent air spirits, leading to an atmosphere of constant anxiety. Conversely, a kingdom that thrives on joy and celebration will see the salamanders dance with vibrant energy, their influence spreading a sense of boundless optimism. Your own inner state, Zan, is a microcosm of this grander ecosystem. The more you understand and acknowledge your own emotions, the more effectively you can connect with and influence these elemental spirits. Alara's gaze turned inward, as if she were peering into a vast, unseen ocean. The challenge lies not in mastering one element over another, but in understanding their interconnectedness. A salamander's fire needs the earth's stability to burn efficiently, a water sprite's sorrow needs the air's ability to release and cleanse, the earth elemental's determination needs the water's fluidity to adapt, and the air spirit's fear needs the fire's courage to be overcome. They are a constant dance, a perpetual interplay, and true mastery comes from orchestrating this symphony within yourself. She then introduced a more nuanced concept, expanding on the ecosystem of elemental spirits. Beyond these primary forms, there are countless lesser spirits, born from the subtler shades of human experience. Consider the playful imps that dance in moments of mischievous delight, born from a wink and a shared secret. They are kin to the salamanders, but their energy is less potent, more localized. Or the stubborn gnomes who embody petty grievances, their earthiness tinged with a frustrating inflexibility. They are the shadowed cousins of the stoic earth elementals, their resolve twisted into obstinacy. Alara continued, her voice a steady stream of knowledge. There are the melancholic nymphs who weep in the quiet corners of despair, their tears feeding the broader currents of sorrow channeled by the water sprites. They are ephemeral, delicate, and easily overlooked, but their accumulated sorrow can darken entire regions. And then there are the harbingers, the fleeting specters of apprehension, born from a fleeting worry, a momentary unease. They are the scouts of the air spirits, their presence a subtle prickle of unease that can escalate into full-blown fear. She looked at Zan, her eyes holding a profound understanding of the intricate magical web that bound Ethelgard. These lesser spirits, while seemingly less powerful individually, collectively shape the ambient mood of a place. A village where petty grievances fester might find its earth elementals becoming sluggish, its water sprites perpetually clouded with despair, and its air spirits buzzing with an undercurrent of unease. Conversely, a community that nurtures creativity and shared joy will find its landscape suffused with a vibrant, life-affirming energy, its elemental spirits harmonizing and amplifying positive experiences. Your own emotional landscape, she reiterated, is a fertile ground for these spirits. The more you acknowledge and engage with your feelings, the more you will attract and foster their presence within you. Think of your own heart as a small, but significant, pocket of Ethelgard. The emotions you cultivate will determine which spirits are drawn to you, and which will flourish in your presence. If you harbor bitterness, you will find yourself surrounded by the gnawing influences of petty gnomes and whispering specters of discontent. If you open yourself to compassion, you will attract the soothing presence of the water sprites and the gentle warmth of the joy-bringers. Alara picked up a smooth, gray stone from a nearby table. This stone, she said, holding it up, is a manifestation of the earth's fundamental essence. It is solid, enduring, and possesses a quiet strength. But it was not always so. In its creation, it was part of a molten flow, subjected to immense heat and pressure, the fiery dance of its birth. Then, over eons, it was shaped by the persistent caress of water and wind, becoming the smooth, rounded form you see today. It has witnessed the rise and fall of mountains, the ebb and flow of tides, and the passage of countless seasons. Its history is etched into its very being, a testament to the constant interplay of elemental forces. She placed the stone back down. So too are you, Zan. Your past, your experiences, have shaped your emotional terrain. The trials you have faced have forged a resilience within you, connecting you to the earth elementals. The moments of vulnerability you have endured have opened you to the influence of the water sprites. The innate spark of life that drives you calls to the salamanders, and the inevitable challenges you have met have awakened the vigilance of the air spirits. The elemental forge, Alara declared, her voice resonating with a newfound intensity, is not merely a place of arcane study, but a crucible of self-discovery. Here, you will learn to recognize the subtle manifestations of these spirits within you, to understand their temperaments, their strengths, and their weaknesses. You will learn to engage with them not as master to servant, but as a conductor to an orchestra, guiding their individual melodies to create a harmonious whole. For it is only when you understand the nature of these elemental forms, and their deep connection to the very fabric of your being, that you can begin to truly forge your own destiny, and wield the power that lies dormant within you. She then presented Zan with a new set of challenges, not of raw elemental manipulation, but of emotional awareness and empathetic connection. Today, we will focus on attuning yourself to the subtle energies of these spirits. I want you to close your eyes, Zan, and to seek the presence of the salamanders. Feel that flicker of joy, that spark of unadulterated happiness. Do not force it, but welcome it. Imagine a small, golden light appearing in your chest, expanding with each breath. Let its warmth spread outwards, not to burn, but to illuminate. Zan followed her instructions, his breath coming steadier, his mind quieting. He focused on a faint memory of a rare, unburdened moment from his childhood, a time before the harsh realities of his life had fully set in. A gentle warmth began to bloom within him, a soft, golden glow that seemed to emanate from his solar plexus. The air around him grew subtly warmer, and he felt a lightness in his limbs, a buoyant energy that made him want to smile. Good. Alara's voice was a soft murmur. Now allow that light to flicker, to dance. Imagine it reaching out, not with intensity, but with invitation. Think of a shared moment of laughter, a spontaneous outburst of delight. Feel the connection it creates. This is the salamander's gift, the ability to spread light and warmth, to inspire and to invigorate. But remember, its power lies in its fleeting brilliance. Do not cling to it, but savor its presence, and allow it to move through you, like a dancing flame. After a period of quiet attunement, Alara guided him to the next element. Now turn your awareness to the earth elementals. Seek that sense of deep-seated resolve, that quiet strength that says I will not break. Imagine a grounding cord extending from your core, anchoring you to the very heart of the world. Feel its solidity, its unyielding nature. Zan focused on the bedrock of his own resolve, the determination that had kept him alive through countless hardships. He felt a heavy, comforting presence settle within him, a solid anchor that seemed to push back against any external pressures. The floor beneath him felt more substantial, and he felt a newfound sense of stability. This is the earth elemental's gift, Alara explained. The power of endurance, the unwavering commitment to one's path. It allows you to stand firm against adversity, to weather the storms without being uprooted. But remember, even the most solid stone can be eroded. Do not let your determination calcify into rigidity. Allow for adaptability, for the understanding that sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in standing still, but in knowing when to yield, when to shift, like a river shaping its course around an immovable obstacle. He then shifted his focus to the water sprites, a more challenging endeavor given his ingrained tendency to suppress negative emotions. Now, Zan, open yourself to the flow of sorrow, to the cleansing embrace of empathy. It may feel uncomfortable, but it is essential. Imagine a cool, cleansing stream flowing through you, washing away any stagnation, any pent-up pain. Allow yourself to feel, without judgment, the sadness that may arise. Zan hesitated, then took a deep breath. He recalled a memory of profound loss, a moment that had forced him to confront the emptiness that had become a constant companion. As he allowed the memory to surface, a cool sensation began to spread through him, like a gentle rain. He felt a release, a subtle unburdening. The air around him seemed to become more humid, and a faint mist began to form at the edges of his vision. "This is the water sprite's gift." Alara's voice was soft and soothing. "The ability to process, to release, and to connect with the shared experience of suffering. It allows for healing, for understanding, and for profound empathy. But be mindful, Zan. The river can become a flood. Do not allow yourself to be swept away by the currents of despair. Learn to flow, to adapt, and to emerge from the depths, cleansed and renewed, not drowned in the sorrow." Finally, Ilara guided him toward the air spirits. "And now, the breath of the unknown, the whisper of fear. Acknowledge it, Zan. Do not resist it. Where does it reside within you? What does it warn you of? Imagine the air around you quickening, becoming charged with the primal energy." Zen felt a familiar knot tighten in his stomach. He acknowledged the fear, the ingrained instinct to flee. He felt a prickling sensation, a heightened awareness of his surroundings, as if every shadow held a potential threat. The air seemed to crackle with an unseen energy, and he felt a subtle urge to move, to be ready. "This is the air spirit's gift," Alara explained, her voice firm but not alarmist. "Vigilance, swiftness, the ability to perceive and react to danger. It is the instinct that keeps you alive. But remember, the wind can become a hurricane. Do not let fear paralyze you, or scatter your focus. Learn to harness its energy, to use it for clarity, for decisive action, rather than allowing it to overwhelm you. Be the hawk that soars above the storm, not the leaf tossed about by the gale." As Zan slowly released these attunements, a sense of profound interconnectedness settled within him. He had not just been manipulating abstract forces. He had been engaging with living entities, each a reflection of a fundamental aspect of his own humanity. The elemental forge was not just a place to learn magic. It was a temple of self-understanding, where the raw materials of his own emotional being were being refined, shaped, and ultimately, mastered. He was beginning to see that true power lay not in the suppression of emotion, but in the conscious, guided engagement with its myriad forms. The spirits were not his to command, but his to understand, his to commune with, and his to integrate into the ever-evolving tapestry of his being. The subtle shift in the air, the almost imperceptible warmth that had bloomed near his fingertips, was so fleeting it might have been a trick of the light, a figment of his own strained concentration. Zan's brow furrowed, his gaze fixed on his hand. It had been there, he was certain, a tiny flicker of luminescence, like a firefly caught in a midday sunbeam, present for a heartbeat then gone. He tried to recapture the feeling, the gentle effervescence that had accompanied its appearance, but it eluded him, dissolving back into the ordinary air of the training chamber. Yet the memory of it, the ghost of that nascent glow, lingered. It was the first tangible evidence, however minuscule, that he was capable of more than just the raw, unfocused surges of power he'd experienced before. He had, for a fleeting instant, touched something. Alara watched him, her expression unreadable. She had seen the brief spark, had felt its faint resonance, as delicate as a butterfly's wing. It was not the roaring inferno of a fully realized salamander, nor the steady luminescence of a beacon, but it was something. A seed buried deep, beginning to stir. She offered no immediate commentary, allowing the moment to settle within him, to be pondered and internalized. The true magic, she knew, often began not with grand pronouncements or overwhelming displays, but with these quiet, almost accidental whispers of potential. Zan, however, felt a tremor of something akin to excitement, a sensation so rare it felt almost alien. His journey had been fraught with frustration, a relentless uphill battle against his own perceived inadequacy. The constant struggle to connect, to grasp the elusive threads of elemental magic, had worn him down. He had felt like a broken instrument, capable only of discordant noise, incapable of producing the harmonious melodies Alara spoke of. But that tiny flicker, that wisp of light, was a different story. It was proof that the music was there, waiting to be played, even if his fingers were still clumsy and untrained. He remembered Alara's words, the descriptions of the salamanders, spirits born of pure joy, of elation, of triumphant moments. He had been focusing, as she had instructed, on that internal spark, that feeling of being alive and incandescent. He had tried to recall moments of unburdened happiness, fleeting memories of a childhood he barely remembered, of laughter shared in sun-drenched fields. It was a difficult exercise, for his life had been a tapestry woven with threads of hardship and fear, and moments of pure, unadulterated joy were scarce. Yet he had persisted, sifting through the emotional detritus of his past, searching for that precious glimmer. And then it had happened. A faint memory surfaced, not of grand achievement, but of a simple, quiet contentment. He had been a child, perhaps, watching the sunlight filter through leaves, a sense of peace washing over him. It was a fragile thing, easily overshadowed by the return of anxiety, the familiar chill of apprehension. But for that brief interval, focusing on that feeling, he had felt a warmth bloom in his chest, a subtle expansion that mirrored the gentle light that had appeared near his hand. It was as if that internal warmth had found a conduit, a way to manifest externally, however faintly. He tried to replicate the feeling, to deepen the wellspring of that nascent joy. He visualized the golden light Alara had described, not as a blazing sun, but as a tiny, tentative flame. He imagined it unfurling, reaching out. He felt a faint warmth again, a sense of gentle expansion, and for a moment, he thought he saw another flicker, a ghost of the light that had been there before. It was almost imperceptible, a shimmer on the edge of his vision, so faint he could have easily dismissed it as a trick of his tired eyes. But this time, he was paying attention. He held on to the feeling, nurturing it, willing it to stay. The air around his hands seemed to thicken, to grow subtly warmer. He could almost feel the energy coalescing, a delicate pressure building. It was not the explosive force of Ignis that he had accidentally unleashed before, but something far more refined, more controlled. It was a whisper, not a shout. He focused on that whisper, on the memory of that fleeting joy, that moment of quiet contentment. He willed the light to remain, to grow, to solidify. And then it happened again. A tiny, almost ethereal luminescence, no larger than a grain of rice, flickered into existence between his thumb and forefinger. It pulsed with a soft, golden light, a miniature sunbeam that cast no discernible shadow. It was undeniably there, a tangible manifestation of the magic he had been striving to grasp. It was weak, ephemeral, and threatened to wink out of existence with every passing second, but it was real. A breath caught in Zan's throat. He dared not move, dared not disturb the delicate balance of this nascent magic. He felt a surge of something unfamiliar, something that pushed back against the ever-present tide of doubt and despair. It was not elation, not a triumphant roar, but a quiet, persistent hum of hope. He had done it. He had, however imperfectly, connected. Alara's lips curved into a faint smile. She saw the wonder in his eyes, the dawning realization that the impossible might, in fact, be within his reach. This was the crucial step, the moment when the struggle began to yield its first, fragile fruits. "Observe, Zan," she said, her voice a soft murmur, barely disturbing the air. "Observe the nature of this manifestation. What does it tell you?" Zan tore his gaze away from his hand, his mind still reeling from the discovery. It's weak," he stammered, his voice raspy. "It's fading. It's barely there. And yet," Alara countered gently, "it is there. It was not there a moment ago. What has changed?" He thought back, tracing the progression of his emotions, his focus. I felt a moment of peace, contentment. And I focused on that. I tried to hold on to it. And what did that attempt reveal about the nature of the salamander spirit?" Alara pressed. He considered the creature a flame, born of joy. "They are fleeting," he realized, the words echoing Alara's earlier description. "Their power is in their brilliance, but it's also in their ephemerality. They are easily extinguished." He looked at the tiny spark, which was indeed beginning to dim, the golden light receding. "It needs constant fuel. Constant joy." "Precisely," Alara affirmed. "You have touched upon the essence of its being. It is sustained by the very emotion that births it. To keep this flame alive, you must cultivate its source. This is not about forcing a feeling, Zan, but about understanding its resonance within you, and allowing it to express itself." As she spoke, the faint light between his fingers finally winked out, leaving his hand looking as ordinary as it had before. A familiar wave of disappointment threatened to wash over him, but he pushed it back, remembering the hard-won feeling of hope. It had been there. It could be there again. It is a beginning, Elara said, as if sensing his internal struggle. A very small beginning, perhaps, but a beginning nonetheless. The path to mastery is built upon such moments. Do not despair at its brevity, but celebrate its existence. You have proven to yourself that the connection is possible. Now, the work is to deepen it, to sustain it, to understand its rhythms. She walked over to a small brazier in the corner of the chamber, where a low, steady flame burned. Consider this fire, she said, gesturing towards it. It requires fuel, air, and a spark to ignite. Its intensity can be controlled, its direction guided. The salamander spirit is akin to this, but its fuel is not wood or oil, but the pure, vibrant energy of joy. Its air is the breath of inspiration and connection. And its spark is the moment of pure, unadulterated happiness. Zen watched the flame, a new understanding dawning. He had been trying to force the fire, to command it into existence, when he should have been tending to its fuel, nurturing the conditions for its birth. His own emotional landscape had been parched, barren ground, incapable of sustaining such a delicate flame. So, to strengthen this connection, Elara continued, her gaze meeting his, you must actively seek out and cultivate moments of joy, however small. Find beauty in the mundane. Savor acts of kindness, both given and received. Engage in activities that bring you a sense of genuine pleasure. And when you feel that flicker of happiness, that spark of contentment, do not let it pass unacknowledged. Embrace it. Breathe into it. And then, with intention, invite the salamander spirit to dance with it. It sounded impossibly difficult, almost a cruel jest, to ask him to actively seek joy when his default state was one of guarded weariness. Yet, the memory of that tiny, golden light, the faint warmth it had generated, was a powerful motivator. It was a tangible goal, a whisper of what could be. This is not about abandoning caution, Zan, Elara added, her voice becoming more serious. The salamander's fire, untended, can consume. But neither is it about succumbing to despair. It is about finding balance. About understanding that even in the darkest of times, glimmers of light can be found, and that these glimmers, when nurtured, can grow into a steady flame. Your task, for now, is to become a gardener of your own emotional landscape, to till the soil of your heart and prepare it for the seeds of joy. She then presented him with a different kind of exercise. Instead of focusing on conjuring the elemental spirits, she instructed him to simply observe. For the remainder of our session, she said, I want you to practice mindful awareness. Observe your thoughts, your emotions, without judgment. Notice the subtle shifts in your inner state. When you feel a flicker of warmth, a moment of calm, acknowledge it. When you feel a shadow of unease, a hint of fear, acknowledge that too. The elemental spirits are woven into the very fabric of your being, and they will respond to the subtle currents of your inner world. Your ability to connect with them will grow in direct proportion to your ability to understand and acknowledge yourself. Zen settled back into his meditation posture, his mind still buzzing with the revelation of the tiny light. He closed his eyes, taking a deep, steadying breath. He tried to push away the frustration of the fleeting spark, the disappointment of its disappearance. Instead, he focused on Elara's instruction, observe. He felt the familiar tension in his shoulders, the tightness in his jaw. He acknowledged it, not with annoyance, but with a simple recognition. Tension, he thought. He felt the urge to fidget, to shift his weight. Restlessness. He noticed the constant hum of anxiety in the background of his thoughts, the whispers of doubt about his progress. Apprehension. He let these feelings exist, observing them like clouds drifting across a vast sky. And then, something shifted. As he allowed these less pleasant emotions to simply be, without fighting them or trying to suppress them, a strange thing happened. The intensity of the anxiety seemed to lessen. The edge of the apprehension softened. It was as if, by acknowledging them, by refusing to engage in a battle with them, he had diffused their power. In that space of relative calm, a different sensation began to emerge. It was subtle at first, a gentle warmth spreading through his chest, not the vibrant glow of the salamander, but something softer, more diffuse. It was a quiet sense of ease, of simply existing without the need to strive or to fear. He felt a gentle unfolding within him, a loosening of the knots that had bound him for so long. He opened his eyes, a faint smile gracing his lips. He hadn't conjured a spirit, hadn't created a visible manifestation of magic. But he had experienced something profound, a moment of genuine inner peace, a space of quietude he hadn't realized was possible. It was not the vibrant, dancing fire of a salamander, but it was a steady, warm ember, a comfortable glow that promised solace. And in that quiet glow, Zan found a deeper, more resilient kind of hope than the fleeting spark had offered. It was a hope born not of grand magic, but of quiet self-understanding, a hope that whispered, even when the external world was filled with shadow, that an inner light could always be found. This was a glimmer, yes, but one that felt more solid, more enduring, than any transient spark. It was a promise of warmth in the cold, of light in the darkness, and for Zan, it was everything.